So here we are today, finally, but we are very excited about our 5 wonderful women of Watertown. Our 6th individual, Christine Bender, is not feeling well, so we'll have a moment and hope that she does well. So, but anyways, thank you so much for coming, and I would like to introduce our moderator for the evening. This is Jill Nadeau, who also happens to be our AAUW president. And her day job, though, is really cool. So she is the producer and sometimes partial host for the Larry Mueller Show on Wisconsin Public Radio. So you really could hear her every day if you want. So at 11 o'clock in the day. But anyway, so with that, thank you very much for coming. We're excited to hear what our 5 wonderful women of Watertown who have come through this community, gone to school here, and come back and made this their hometown, and have contributed greatly to this community. So with that, I hand it over to Jill.
Thank you, Pat, very much. And thank you to the committee who put this together, and Pat was the ringleader on that and did a fantastic job. Again, over 2 years, we scheduled it and unscheduled it a couple of times, so thank you all for being flexible. We really appreciate that. So we want this to be kind of an organic kind of a conversation with these women who have, like Pat said, they went to school here. They went away to school, but then they came back and created a life for themselves, and they're very successful, obviously. And we just thought it would be nice to get some of that wisdom out there and to share it with maybe some young women in the community who are thinking, should I stay in Watertown? Should I come back? Because there's always a question. So that's kind of where we're going to go. And all of you who are here in your program, you can see who we have here, but we're going to just ask them one by one if they could tell us a little bit about themselves, introduce yourself, and maybe just, let's start with your education first, where you went to maybe middle school or high school or whatever, and where you went to college. And we'll just pass this down. We only have the one microphone, unfortunately, so bear with us. And just pass it down and tell us who you are and all that good info.
Hello, I'm Amy Buckles. I acquired my Master's of Fine Arts from UW Milwaukee.
Sandra Budowitz. I'm the owner of Sandra D's Bridal Boutique and graduated high school here, obviously, and I have an associate degree from clothing and textiles associate degree from Madison METC.
I am Emily Lessner. My maiden name was Vandenhabel, so I graduated from the high school here in 1999, and then I went to Luther College in Iowa and majored in elementary education and went there for music was why I went there, and then ended up getting my master's from UW La Crosse, and now I'm the principal at Douglas Elementary School.
Good evening, everybody. I spent the day with some of you, so you know it's been a long day, which is why my voice is a little fatigued. So I'm glad there's at least one mic. I'm Emily Mcfarland. I am the mayor of the city of Watertown. And I spent my first years right up the street at St. Bernard's. I was a St. Bernard's girl, so was Nikki. Was a thing. And then I went to the middle school and then the high school, graduated there in 2003. And then I got my undergrad from Carthage College, where I played volleyball in political science and minored in Spanish, which I still use to this day. I translate nearly every week for people coming upstairs to pay their parking tickets. I'm only one of 2 people that speak Spanish in City Hall, and speak Spanish is pretty generous now at this point. And then I got my master's in public administration from UW Oshkosh, and have had the pleasure of serving this city in some capacity for nearly a decade.
Hi, I'm Nikki Salas. Maiden name was Sherry. I also went to St. Bernard's, then I went to Riverside Middle School. I graduated in '98 from Watertown High School. Then I attended METC in Watertown for my associate degree. I went back 10 years later, got a bachelor's in nursing through the University of Phoenix. And then last year I graduated with my master's in nursing, leadership, and management at UW Green Bay. And now I have a whole different role. I'm no longer in nursing, so it'll be interesting how I answer these questions today.
Good thing they're still not worried about a pandemic with this microphone going through. So how do you you feel about the education that you received in Watertown, and how did it influence your secondary educational goals and where you went and what you decided to major in?
Do I have to go first every time? Well, moving back to Watertown, yeah, what do you do with a Master's of Fine Arts here? I taught for a while. I taught my own classes for a while. And then I gravitated into real estate. This is where this ties in. After a few deals, I started building, designing, and renovating. And I realized, wow, my art trickles into everything I do. So that's what I currently do right now. I do a lot of real estate investment. I do the management side, and we'll see what happens next.
So as for my schooling, I would probably have to say that my mom got me started in the sewing area, which is why I continued on in school to get the clothing and textiles degree. I will also say that home ec was a big part of that in high school, which I don't know that that's really the same anymore. I'm not sure they have traditional home ec classes where you do sewing and everything, but I really loved that part of it, so that's why I continued on in school. And that was a huge part of me starting my business, because I do all of the seamstress work there. So I guess it just trickled down.
So I actually transferred to Watertown High School my senior year. I had gone to Lakeside before that, and I think just right away in my senior year, there were some opportunities to do some leadership type things. Kathy Wagner was my principal, and she said, hey, there's this healthy community, healthy youth group, and I ran for student council, but nobody knew who I was, so I didn't make it. So then I think two of us, another guy and me, got to be on this healthy community, healthy youth, and got to be the high school kids on a panel that worked with community members. And I got to do other things throughout high school and leadership roles. And I had a wonderful French horn teacher, Pat Newberger, who really pushed doing music in college. So some really great mentors and ladies that were encouraging me to do some things, and my parents obviously. But then went away to college and started out as a music major, and then realized my first class of my junior year, I'm like, this isn't, maybe elementary ed is more my thing. So then was involved in some leadership things in college, ran a youth mentor program for college kids that went to the local elementary schools, and actually the state teachers union had a college group, and I was on that in college. Again, some good advisors that encouraged me to do that, and then ended up kind of continuing to connect with some of those advisors moving forward. But some great role models and great encouragement here in Watertown, and then beyond.
I've said this before, so for those of you that have heard this speech, just go with me. So I had two teachers in high school and one in middle school, and actually my middle school teacher was Mr. Kempen. And I've talked to him now in my job. He called to, he was upset about leaf pickup, and I chatted with him I was like, hey, Mr. Kempen, do you remember me? You're totally part of why I have this job today. And he was like, I don't, but I'm really glad to hear that. I was like, oh, well, you really made an impact on me. And then I was lucky. I was able to be taught and coached by Steve Jacobson. And when I stood in front of the city council in 2013 and said, this is why I want you to pick me, it was about giving more than you take. And that is what Mr. J lived by, and I will remember that and hope to instill it in our children. And then I also had Tim Suski, who pressed me hard. I mean, Michelle, we can't cry the whole time, I'll never make it through. My mother-in-law is sitting in the front row just giving me loving eyes. So I had Tim Suski, and he just retired. And it was incredible for me that when he announced his retirement, I felt fortunate that he reached out to me and said, hey, I'd really love for you to come to this party. Because he made a profound impact on the trajectory of my education. Mr. Suski, I didn't realize it at the time, I felt like he was just picking on me at the time, but he pressed me to think beyond what I was learning at home and made me think that there is a world beyond just this community, and Mr. J was another person that just substantiated that. Some of my first trips outside of the city were with Steve Jacobson. He took me to Milwaukee, he took me to Florida, like he took us all over this community just in an effort to expose us to something more. Not because what is here isn't enough, because it is, obviously we all believe that or we wouldn't have come back. But to be able to come back and then infiltrate into this community what we've learned in other communities. So I was fortunate to have 3 teachers that I can say profoundly impacted the trajectory of my career from here in Watertown.
I don't even know where to start. So in high school, I actually was on a path where they had a health observation class. And I thought maybe I wanted to do nursing, but they also exposed us to like all different areas in the hospital. So I was able to see radiology and lab, and it really opened my eyes, but I really liked the nursing piece of it. So as I was going through high school, I was graduating early in January, and Mr. Sterling at the time helped me get into METC my January year of my high school year. So I actually graduated nursing when I was 20 years old. I knew I wanted to do emergency nursing, so I started at the Watertown Hospital, and then I had a passion to go travel. And so I had to get some experience as trauma 1 or 2 centers. So I went to Waukesha because it felt a little like home. It was still small and quaint, and you knew people. And from there I went out to California. I did travel nursing out there for a few years and then went to Florida, where I met my husband, who's actually from Watertown. Long story, we met in a bar in Watertown. Bismarck's is our place. And we decided that we were gonna take our family back home, where both of our families were. And so we came back, and I started working at the Watertown Hospital again, and I had the privilege, John Kasanovich at the time was the CEO, and he was a huge mentor to me. And he recognized what I had done through the last few years, and he gave me the option to step out of nursing a little bit and build the brand new ER. And so I was able to do that, and I had so many mentors during that time that continued to push me to go on for more education, and then I became a director at the hospital over several units. I was mentoring nurse leaders, except I'd call back my professors and say, well, what am I doing? I should be a nurse, and they'd coach me through it. And then after COVID, I knew that it was time for a change for me. I've been doing it 22 years. And so now I am the COO of Area Dental in Watertown.
Do you want me to shut the question?
I have 2, can I make 2 connections to their
Absolutely.
comments? So Bismarck's is also my husband's place that we met, and he's from Watertown too. And then Mr. Jacobson also, so I transferred him as a senior at the time. Government was a freshman class, and my brother was a freshman. And the first day of class, like I would have been with my brother and his friends, which was like appalling.
Yeah.
So Mr. Jacobson said, hey, and I didn't know, it's like the value of this community, didn't know me and was like, you can do an independent study with me. I took an online government class way back in 1998, and which was like not really something you did. And then Mr. Jacobson said, no, you passed that for the semester. Now the second semester you're gonna run the Renaissance Fair, because they used to do a Euro history project where all the elementary kids came. And so another, great people encouraging people to do different things.
Kind of a follow-up on that one. Do you consider yourselves mentors for some of the young women in your lives? And if that's the case, how do you feel about that? You can pass it down further if you want
Let's
to.
start on the other end.
The answer is yes. I definitely feel like a mentor. I've been fortunate enough to work amongst so many wonderful women in my career, and it's been fun to see their qualities and tell them their strengths and make them recognize it and trying to bring out the best in them. And so when I worked at the hospital, I was always like looking at each person like, you're really good at this, you're really good at this, but I also look at weaknesses, because weaknesses complement strengths. So you have to have the right people on the right seat in the bus to actually make it work. So throughout my career at the hospital, I was a huge mentor. I still get phone calls, even though I'm not at the hospital, on questions. I was fortunate enough to walk into a dental practice too that needed mentoring, and so I've been able to carry that over, even though it's not nursing, into my new leadership role. And I think it's super important, as we have our experiences and knowledge, that we share as much as we can with everybody. There's no sense in holding it in and I hope that I teach something to someone along the way that they hold on to.
Short answer, yes. And I don't know that 3 or 4 years ago I would have said that. I think I would have balked at it and been like, well, maybe I am to some people. But today I ended my day with being a mentor, actually. This was a great question to a person that's in my master's program. They paired us up with alumni, and so I was able to meet with him and chat with him about working through that program. But I think what's important now and what I've really come to learn is we have to own the gifts that we have. And if mentorship is one of those gifts that we've been given, it's incumbent on us to use it appropriately. So whereas a few years ago I may have questioned it, I now know that I'm able to and blessed to be able to lead this community and lead people in it, and hopefully inspire people to walk a path that they feel called to. And I'll just share a quick story. So I get to do these things often, obviously, which is pretty cool. And I was talking to a group of 4-H kids, and I take my sons when I can so that they can, become accustomed to and be a part of this job as well. So my son's sitting in the corner, and I'm listening to these 4-H students, and I stand up and talk, and at the end, I'm trying to hustle him up to get him home, and this little girl comes up to me, and she hands me a piece of paper, and it's still in my office, and it's a drawing, and it says, "What I thought you looked like," and it's like a Disney princess, no joke, a beautiful long dress, long flowing hair, and then it said, "What you actually look like." And Jordan, some people, you've seen it, it's in my office, and I keep that as a reminder that so often when we're women, and I don't mean to make this just about women, because even when you're little boys, we're socialized to think about these people that are just not real, right? These super strong guys or super beautiful women. And so for that little girl to hand me that piece of paper and just say, "You're a normal person who has this really cool job, and I could be a normal person," and most likely, that it could have that really cool job too. I mean, that is single-handedly one of the most impactful experiences that I've ever had. And I see that little girl sometimes. And she always just kind of looks at me and does one of these, which is really one of my favorites. It's better than getting yelled at by people. And I'll never forget her. And I'll never forget that gift she gave me of just normalizing how powerful each one of you and each one of my fellow panelists up here are in the situations that we're put in.
So I would say I hope so. I hope I'm a mentor. Mentor, yes. It's that's a great part of what I love about my job as a principal, working with all the teachers and the paraprofessionals. I mean, we have 60 people that work at Douglas Elementary School, and that's one school of many schools, and people that have come and gone, and it's really awesome to build those connections with, we have a lot of, since I've been there, because I've taught there before, so I've been there, this is my 19th year at Douglas, and there's a lot of new people since then. At one of our Christmas parties, I think a few of us were looking around oh boy, there's a handful that were here when we started together, so it's really neat to bring people in, and a lot of people new to our community, or maybe have come back, or now former students coming to work for us as paraprofessionals or teachers. One of my teachers was in my first class. Was a 4th grader of mine, so that's pretty cool. And she tells that to the kids, then they think I'm really old. You're her teacher? You're yes, that was a long time. But anyway, and then I think just another great part that I love is working with parents in our community. I have a couple of kids, and now they're older and a little bit more independent in high school and middle school, and then just working with parents and helping them get connected with places in our community and really building that relationship. At school we have 3-year-olds now through 11-year-olds, so some of these families you work with for 8 years, and that's a really important thing. And I mean, there are many 5th grade meetings that I have cried at with kids because you see their growth and you're so proud of their parents, and so I love that part of my job in mentoring parents and also our teachers.
Okay, I guess I come from a different perspective than everybody else here, being a businesswoman, but I guess I feel like I'm a mentor. I've had several employees that have gone on to start their own businesses, so I'm really proud of that.
Sorry. Talk amongst yourselves.
It's okay. But the other side of it is really cool when the little girls want to come in and see the pretty dresses, and hopefully someday they will see themselves doing the same thing or opening their own business or things like that.
Yeah. Yes, my audience is a little different. I don't think middle school or high schoolers are ready to invest into real estate, but there are connections like HGTV and all that fun stuff on TV. But I guess my biggest audience is young adults that are saving up money, buying homes, or thinking, hey, I want to do more than just a home. I feel there are many different levels, and you don't need to be part or full-time like I am. You can do it on the side, and that's what I encourage a lot of people to do. I think it's a wealth generator that can help with your other career, we'll say. So there's many different avenues, but I would say I encourage them to find opportunity. Like Watertown, opportunity runs through it. You have to think creatively, you have to find those good deals. And that's what I try to encourage them to do. And obviously I pull out my boring spreadsheets and crunch numbers with them, find the value X and cap, and all the operating expenses, but at the end of the day, it has to make sense. And I guess I could tell a story. Emily actually helped me with this one. There was a property that I found that it had potential, but it needed aspects that were missing. The 3 things that I wanted to do to the property was add garages, I guess amplify the outdoor living spaces, and add a bedroom. Obviously there's in-depth plenty that goes on with the construction phase, but also the city phase. And we were having difficulties fitting in that garage because of space with green space to the property lines and everything like that. But there's an in-depth quality that is fun and exciting that, once you dive in, it gets interesting.
And she built, it worked.
Yeah.
And it works, okay. That's the key, it works. And Sandy, maybe you could probably speak to this a little bit more than the rest of the panelists, but just because we're of a certain age and experience. But back in the day when you started your business, there weren't very many women in business. And this kind of goes to the rest of you too, in that how difficult has it been for you as a woman in your professions? And have you run into any problems? And if you have, how have you handled that? And what advice do you have for young girls and young women who maybe experience that same thing?
Sandra, do you want to start?
I guess I will. Because actually it is quite interesting. When I think back at age 24, young person, woman, trying to go get a loan for a business that I wanted to open was interesting. I will say that I got the best response from a female banker. So out of all the banks that I went to, I dealt with one female at one bank, and she actually was a big part of getting me started. But it's a lot different now, obviously, but I couldn't have done it without her help and without my parents' help, obviously. But it is, I think, challenging for women, but if I would say to any young person that wants to start a business is if you have a dream and a goal, just go for it, because you just don't know. There's going to be people along the way that will help you out.
Where did that come from, Sandy? At that age, for you to say, I'm going to start my own business?
I have no idea. I think it was, when you're young, you have no fear. I really didn't think of, I didn't think of the negative side, that this isn't going to work. I just had a positive outlook, I guess, and you have to be optimistic. You can't really go in thinking you're going to fail.
So for the past 10 years, I've been an elementary principal here in town, and I think, and there are still people who are like surprised, I think, that there's female, I don't know. And there are people in this room who have done that job well before I did, and I was hired by Kathy Wagner to teach that after she was my high school principal. She hired me to teach too. And she, I think in our community we've had great female leaders in our schools, and now our team is pretty much 50-50 at the district level. But it's interesting because I think there's sometimes still a mindset of, the kids will listen better, or, sometimes just your way. I think people have impressions of how they think females might act or compared to male counterparts, and I think it's just showing that, you just use your strengths and you build a strong team, and there's really no barrier. But I also, when I started in that role, I was like 32, so that was pretty young, I think, and didn't know a lot of things, but also, you just go for it. The opportunity kind of arose, and had just finished getting my principal's licensure at UW Milwaukee, and the opportunity arose, and I'm like, all right, so 2 little kids, just gonna go for it and learn, and again, really work with the team, because you can't do anything great all by yourself. And so I learned a lot, but also when I started as elementary principal, I was one of 4, and the 3 others were gentlemen who had been doing it a lot longer than me. And so I think just finding your voice and making sure you're not afraid to speak up, even though it might not sound smooth, and just making sure that you make sure your voice is heard, whether you're male or female, but even if you're new and young. So, all right.
So I am the city's first female mayor, and apparently the youngest. I haven't actually vetted either one of those things for myself, but people tell me it, so I'm going to go with it. And at the time I was elected, there were 9 of us, female mayors throughout the state. And I only know that because the mayor of Wauwatosa at the time, her name was Kathy Eli, she called me within like the first month, because in the first couple of months of me having this job, there was a member of the Common Council who wanted to get rid of 4 out of my 5 major powers. And she was like, oh, congratulations, like that happens to all of us. Like it happened to me 3 times in like the first 5 years I was mayor, so good job. You must be doing something right. And at the time, it felt terrible, really terrible. And but her support was really important to me. I'll echo everything Emily said, and just kind of add, I don't like to add a less than positive lens, but I think it's really important for both women and men to hear this part. You kind of said like, well, what was a difficult part about it? I was on the city council and had both of our boys, so I was pregnant with both of them, sitting in common council meetings and in committee meetings with a variety of people, and I was actively harassed. I was sexually harassed, I was touched a lot, things that are completely inappropriate. And I didn't like it, obviously, but I could hack it, is what I kind of was like. Those people, it's the littlest one, I think. Those people are idiots. And I just moved on with my day, right? If you fast forward the clock, I was sitting at my job in Madison, and I got a call from John David, who was the mayor at the time, and our city attorney wanted to meet with me, and I was like, what did I do? And I came in to meet with them, and they said, we got a complaint that you're being harassed in meetings. And I said, well, yes, I am. And they said, well, why didn't you say anything? And it was a really important moment for me as a professional to realize that just because I could hack it didn't mean that every person after me could or should have to. And so I learned that lesson the hard way, and I share it in this context as a reflection point for hopefully all of us, including the men and the boys in this room. Because my husband's asked me this question before. He's like, well, what do you say to men then sitting in the room? You stop them. That's your job. When you observe it, you say something about it. Like, hey man, let's not do that. Or if you observe people interrupting or taking the ideas of other women in the room. And I have been just really lucky to be on some statewide work groups with men from other communities that have said, hey, I think Mayor Mcfarland just said that same thing. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us as leaders and as people sitting in the room that when you observe things that you think are not correct or it's happening to you, we have to say something. And it doesn't have to be a thing, right? Like, it's just like, hey, that's not appropriate. Like, hey, don't put your hands on her legs, as an example. But I realize that was an incredibly negative answer to your question, but I do think I do think it's important for people to have that kind of honest empowerment in a group and in a group setting. Can you lighten it up, please?
I forgot the question. No, I kind of know it, but I'd have to say working in nursing, it's very women-driven until you get to the C-suite where then you tend to see more men. I have to say that throughout my career, it took a lot of courage, strength. I was very passionate and I had a lot of experience with emergency, so I felt comfortable sitting at a table, and the more challenges they gave me, the more I fought back. And I think, though, if I didn't have the experiences, it would have been really difficult to get through. The best part of my career was when COVID hit. I sat on many boards in the community, in the city, on the state, preparing for this to happen at some point, and not necessarily COVID, but an emergency situation. I had been traveling to Alabama for a while, getting training down there, and at the time, some of the folks in the C-suite, let's just say, would say, we're never going to use that. We never need that. Well, as soon as COVID happened, the first one I called was my CEO and the mayor, and it had to go into action. And I think it took them finally to recognize that I was a strong leader at the hospital, and I led the whole efforts through the 2 years of getting ventilators and calling states. And thank God that I had those resources and made those partnerships throughout the state to help us get through it. And honestly, and I'm not speaking it just because I'm talking about myself here, because I have a hard time doing that, but Watertown Hospital was in such a good position that we never ran out of supply, and we always had staff. And I can tell you, for the first year and a half, not one emergency nurse got COVID, because we had everything that we need to do our job. And at the end of the day, I could go home when I got to go home and sleep and feel good about the efforts that I was making. Is that a little better?
This is really off the cuff. You guys, she's not lying, and I feel like many of the women sitting up here deserve this, but Nikki Salas, by and large, carried a lot of this community during the pandemic, and there were many nights, it was the middle of the night, that we were messaging each other just inspired messages. But I really think that she deserves to be honored for the work that she did and what she gave to this community. It was incredible. We were standing at the career fair. Do you remember this? Yes. We were standing at the career fair at Watertown High School, and I was like, "What are you doing here?" Like, we knew this was coming. And she's like, "Well, what are you doing here?" And then she handed me a hand sanitizer, and we're like, "See you later." Pretty much what we did for 2 years. So.
I didn't answer yet. That's all right. In my field, I am kind of an odd duck, I have to say. I surprise a few people because I'd rather talk shop than anything, but I work with a community of electricians, contractors, plumbers, that sort of thing. But when I came to Watertown, I saw that there was a lack or a need, I think, of a women's touch, because management in rentals, I feel like they were lacking just that extra, like, hey, this is your home you're gonna live in, you know? And I desired that for others too. So I try my best, obviously it comes down to cost and everything, to amplify the space as much as possible. I'll joke here and there with my electrician because I want the outlet over here, because obviously you put your groceries down right here and you need to put your cell phone in. Those little things bug me so bad. Or I want a bigger island, and you know, they'll fight me and say, no, it doesn't need it. And I'm like, it does. So those little things, you know, light a fire in me, and I keep going, and soon men will start thinking the same way. No, just kidding. But yeah, I think that's it.
Well, and who usually makes a decision for purchasing the house?
Right there.
So that's wise. They should be listening to you. And Emily, that wasn't a downer. That's just life. And, you know, we gotta bring it up, because it's not all, you know, flowers and hearts. It's hard sometimes.
I thought about sharing this story. Can you guys hear me okay? No. I thought about instead sharing this story about, when I first started doing business visits, I mean, you can see what I'm wearing today. I have on a stiletto heel and cropped pants. So I show up to do a business visit, and they're like, oh, you aren't wearing closed-toed shoes and full-length pants? I was like, no, I'm sure not. Like, I'm a lady. Not that all women do, but I do. And then, like, I went to the next business visit, and I was wearing a dress, and they're like, oh, you have to have on full pants. And so that was the story I was planning on sharing, is if you ever are in a position, these are like my coffee table book moments. I think people take for granted small things like that too. It's not just the big scary things like I shared, but I now, when we set up business visits, we say to them, is there anything special the mayor needs to wear? And I think that's just something that men take for granted. You assume they're gonna wear long pants and full, closed-toed shoes, and we don't. So if you're ever in those situations and there's a steel toe requirement or a hard hat, I mean, I'm not kidding. It made me feel stupid the first few times I went, because then I'm standing there with the president of a company looking at me, and I can't even step a foot into his building. So that's what I was going to share instead. Which do you think was better?
I don't know. Thank you for adding to that. That's great, Emily. Yeah, and that's a lot of things that we don't even really understand. There's usually not that people are trying to be negative or inappropriate. It's just that they're not educated. So, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Watertown and the opportunities that are here that you've obviously seen here. Why don't you give us some of those, and I know Emily's probably going to give us kind of a little list. That's your job. But for the rest of you too, what are the opportunities that you see here in this community?
Does anybody want to go first?
No, I'll go last.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to start with kind of a funny story. So, me and my husband moved back to Watertown. He wants to get involved. I want to get involved. We don't have kids yet. So we decide that we're going to get on something in Watertown. So I joined a Kiwanis meeting. And I'm definitely like the youngest by probably 40 years at this point. And Nate joined the Lions. And he got to go to the country club and have scotch and sing songs. And I got to go to the Upper Crust, which my aunt used to own. It's a great restaurant, but we had to talk about quilts and all that stuff. And I came home from my meeting, and he came home from his, and I'm like, I can't do this. And he's like, I can't either. What are we gonna do? And so Nate has actually done a lot more in the city directly than I have, but starting the Yes Group and getting that going. And then I sit on the board for River City Volleyball. I am still involved. I'm on the Police and Fire Commission for Watertown. I also am still on some of the board meetings. I was at the hospital for emergency preparedness, pediatric death review in Jefferson and Dodge counties. So I still play roles in the counties as well. But back to your question, because now I'm going off on a tangent about my committees. Opportunities. I think there's a lot of opportunities in Watertown. It's just tapping into the right resources. I know it takes a lot of time, but if we don't do it, I think the worst thing that bothers me is when you go places and people complain, but yet they're not doing anything. And my first comment back is, then get on that committee, or have you talked to anyone about it? And I feel like we're starting to make a change. I'm super excited about the downtown. I've been very supportive. Nate's a big part of the RDA and leading that effort. But I see a lot of positive change coming with the downtown square, and I'm looking forward to that.
All right, so another connection, Nikki, I also was on Kiwanis. But it didn't work because it was noon to 1 on Mondays. And it was like, I can't be away from school for that long, but it was very nerve-wracking, but a nice group of people. But we should have been on it together. Then we could have. But I think there's so many opportunities. I have been on a couple boards as well at the hospital, not anymore, but also like even through church. We have so many great religious organizations in town, and also some different things. The Health Foundation in our community is so fabulous and have brought so many wonderful things to our town for kids and for families. And just, I think if a family is looking for a place to live or someone's looking for a place to work, it's exciting to be here right now because we're sitting in this beautiful space. The downtown's exciting. I have 2 kids and my husband and I moved to Hartford when we got married because he worked in West Bend. Then we moved to Lake Mills because he worked in Middleton, and then when our kids were in elementary school, we brought our son went to school in Lake Mills, and at Christmas time, like, we're just gonna open enroll him back. Like, we're doing really good things. Like, he needs to come with me, and then a couple years later, we moved back here. There's so many opportunities for families and for kids, and it just has always been that way. And I think there's a lot of support for new ideas. It seems it's an exciting place to be.
I agree with both of you. The downtown is near and dear to my heart, obviously, that's where my business is, and I am a part of the Main Street Program Board, so the downtown is very important to all of us, but it's changing, and it's changing for the good. There's a lot of good things happening. I think it's a great place to be. I wouldn't want my business anywhere else, and I think there's a lot of opportunities. Just because I have several employees that have gone off to start their own businesses, that there is a lot of opportunity to start business here because the downtown it's coming along, especially with the town square coming.
Yeah, real estate, location. Location is everything. But I have found that Watertown offers a hedge against a lot of other communities that are surrounding. First, we have Madison, Milwaukee on either side. And at first, when I was doing a lot of my rental applications, I wanted to keep 2 Watertown people. And that has totally changed in the last couple of years. I'm seeing interest from other communities liking Watertown. I mean, I've had people out of Milwaukee saying, I want to get out of here. I want a smaller, tight-knit community, which is fun to see. I developed a few properties right by the high school because of the walking paths, the parks, close to the downtown. We've got everything at access. And I feel like I can give more bang for your buck, I guess, because they're shopping around on the internet and seeing, wow, I can get this much square footage and in a better updated quality than paying more in this location. So it's been kind of fun seeing those changes happening, and I'm not afraid of out of town people, and they're enjoying it. They really are. They're pleasantly very surprised.
Emily, did you want to?
Do you want me to answer?
I do.
Well,
Keep it short.
I was like, how much time do I have? No. So I would say, first and foremost, what I always tell people about Watertown is we are large enough to accommodate you and small enough to appreciate you. And that, I think, is something that's very unique about the city of Watertown. Oh, hey, boys. My boys are here. That's something that I think is really unique about our community because we are, last I checked, the 34th largest city in the state. How many of you would have thought that? Like, I didn't think that. I pulled up the list and started looking in like the 50s. So being the 34th largest municipality in the state and having the geographic location that we have, you can live here, as Amy just said, for a lower cost of living and still have access in 20 minutes to anything that you could want, pretty much. And in addition to just kind of, I think, the cultural aspects and the location aspects, when I first moved back to Watertown, there was like this group of 30 of us. Some of them in this room are sitting here. And then we were on everything. Like, the 30 of us, it felt like we're on every board and every committee just trying to move the needle. And then it was like 60 of us. And then it was like 90 of us. And then it became a number that just multiplied. Like I don't even see some, like I used to see some people in this room often because it was just us, kind of trying to move the needle in this community. But now the momentum swing is profound, and I don't mean this as conceited as it will sound, but I am living proof of that momentum shift. I said it at my election night, people didn't elect me, they elected the idea of me, and the willingness for this community to flip the page and make this momentum shift and just let the positivity multiply. And I think that is the opportunity that I would love to just bottle and keep forever. Because with that shift, we have done tremendous things. You've heard people speak about the downtown. We are working on massive development, like nearly 100-acre developments on the west side of the city, 100-acre developments on the south side of the city. We've been incredibly progressive. I'm looking at these lights at Mullins. 3 years ago, those lights were illegal. I mean, they put up, well, no, that's a different story for a different day. Outdoor commercial entertainment is the fancy word that we call that in government, and that didn't happen. So, I mean, and that didn't happen just with me, or just with those 30 people. It happened with elected officials, too, that stepped up to serve this community, that sees the value and things like that. So, yes, there are, like, elevator speech items I can talk about statistically, but what I can't put my hands on, and is honestly the most powerful, is that this community said, I'm sick of saying I want to be it, and we became it.
I feel like I should end on that. That was really, you should run for office if you were.
I am term limited.
Oh, that was great. So yeah, absolutely. We have wonderful opportunities here, and I have an Airbnb in town, and so I get a lot of people in town that have never been here before, and they're so excited about Watertown and what we have here, and oh my gosh, I can't believe what a wonderful walking area you have. And so sometimes it's nice to see your community with fresh eyes. So anyway, just not that I'm on the panel, but just saying. So let's kind of get back to what we were talking about before, and challenges not only facing the community and everyone in it, but women in particular. Do you think there are some super challenges that we have to worry about in the next 5 to 10 years?
And this may be an unexpected answer. So the largest hurdle, I'm going to take that back, like from the women, this female perspective. One of the biggest challenges I've encountered is other women. I think that it's been a slow progression of seeing women rise to the leadership roles that you're seeing sitting on this panel and sitting in the audience. And at times, we have been busy knocking off each other's crowns instead of straightening them. And so for me, I mean, obviously there's going to be challenges that we all face economically, statistically, things that government people like me really get excited about, and probably educators like Emily too. But I will never forget when I was campaigning, this was before I stopped reading the comments. So now if you comment about me, I don't see it, because I don't read them. But I was reading the comments early on. This is my first campaign, and I will never forget this woman. I still see her at church every Sunday, and it grinds me every Sunday. And then I pray a lot about it. She said, if she's the mayor our city needs to be, she'll neglect her children. And if she's the mother she needs to be, she'll neglect our city. And I literally was like just talking to this woman like 2 weeks before in the nursery, like sitting on the floor chit-chatting with her. Oh, so crappy. But I was incensed, right? Like we all would be. And I was like, oh, I'm in the car, so I have plenty of time to like start tapping my thumbs away on that screen. And I stopped because I've learned that about myself. I stopped and I walked away, and we went to the family event we were going to, and we got back in the car. And by the time I got back in the car, I didn't have to say a word because this community did. That woman was raked through the coals for what she said to me. And I think what I worry about is just multi-generationally not allowing one another to step forward into these leadership situations. And then even when we do, because there's so few afforded to us still as women, that we compete with each other and we don't support each other enough. And if you've been in and out of my office, you hear me say all the time, heavy is the head that carries the crown. And I know that when I feel the most supported and when I am the most stressed out, I have wonderful men in my life that will support me and help me out. But if I hear from one of these people or one of my closest friends, it is just this incredible spark of just strength. So I worry about that. I worry about other women not helping other women. Anyone else? That's a good chance.
Or good question.
I'm gonna bounce off a little bit about what you're saying, but definitely working in the nursing field, seeing the mental health struggles that we've been faced with and how they went up in children about 300% in the last 2 years. I'm dealing with it a little bit with our girls and the struggles they have in life with bullying, social media, all the things. And trying to be that confident woman at home, but yet still be the mom and not cry when she's crying and whatnot. But I really think that we have a job in life, and that's to make our kids successful and give them the confidence. And I think that, like Emily said, we grew up in really good families and we had that support system, and not everyone does, and we have to remember that at the end of the day and just support one another through the difficult times. But I'm really scared for the future of our kids as I continue to see and I continue to hear all the challenges, and even they don't even know how to socialize. And yeah, the pandemic didn't help, but it's us making those leaps forward and helping the kids get through some of these challenging times.
I'll bounce off of that because mental health, social emotional skills are a huge passion of mine and a huge priority that I'm proud to be part of. I'll speak again. You know, we've seen, that's a really interesting, I could say, I would agree that childhood mental health has been a big struggle for kids, and who knows, so many factors. And I mean, they're on technology so much, and just lives have changed, and parents' lives have changed, and probably parents' struggles that maybe didn't have the support that they needed when they were little. But I am so thankful for the work, like I mentioned before, the Health Foundation, the Greater Watertown Community Health Foundation has been so supportive of mental health. We've been, in our community, I think, trailblazers in a lot of things, bringing in school-based mental health services for kids, for parents that want them. Nothing's forced on anyone. And parents are so thankful and so appreciative and so positive about their kids being able to get the help they need, because if we help one child, it helps so many. And then you think, you know, when we talk about it, these are our future neighbors, our future employees, our future, you know, we want them to feel good and be able to do whatever they want. And you can't learn or be a part of something if you can't regulate yourself, or if you're depressed or anxious. And anxiety in kids looks like anger, anxious kids, do things that no one understands why they're doing that unless you think of it through a different lens. So as a school district, we've done a lot of work on learning about trauma and approaches to working with kids, and had so many opportunities through state grants. We were chosen as a district of less than a handful in the state to receive a grant this year to support student mental health because of the great work that's already been done. So I think, just positive, encouraging families. If you know of families who need help, come here to the Watertown Family Connections, get involved and get kids out and about, because like I said, they're our future in this town, and we have great, great kids, and I think we just can work together so well. But that's a challenge. I ditto what Nikki said, and our teenagers, our teenage kids, our teenage girls, just that social media piece. I'm just thankful it didn't exist. Like, I'll tell kids, I had an email address my senior year of high school, and it was like dial-up, and I didn't have a cell phone, which you have when you're 6. I didn't have one of those till I was like 21, and it didn't do anything fancy. It literally called people, and they're just fascinated, because it's like, knowing nothing different, but it comes with a whole lot of complexity and mental health challenges for kids, so.
I'm trying to remember the question. No, just kidding. I think It comes down to, I think, balance. Balance in life, family life, work life. I get questioned all the time, why am I buying more properties? I'm just making more work for myself. But there's something in me that just wants to keep going and learning and challenges and whatever comes next. And I don't want to deny that, but I also want a balance in life with my 2 girls and my husband and everything else. But I just encourage girls to learn about yourself, know what ticks you. Make sure you feed that too and follow, dreams, and then adventure and wonderment come out of it.
Well, that kind of leads to my last question, because we are running out of time. So you kind of answered it already. But basically, what advice do you have for young women, young girls, who are thinking about what they want to do with their lives, and why Watertown is a good decision to come to?
I'll just skip.
I think Watertown has a lot to offer. I'm happy that it's my hometown. I'm happy that my business is here, my family's here, my friends are here. I would recommend to any young girls, young ladies, to go after your dreams. If something excites you, explore it and see what you can make out of it. I never dreamed that I would be owning a bridal store. Honestly, I love to sew, and this is 33 years later, this is what I have, so I'm very proud of that. I think Watertown's a great place to be and a great place to live.
I'll piggyback off of that. I think just, don't limit yourself and find something that you're really passionate about, because we work for a long time, we tried to have my son get a job and they're like, you're 14, you're gonna work forever. But I am also in what Amy said about balance. I think COVID, if it taught me anything, it taught me that it's important to balance, and it's okay to go home and be the one that picks up your kids. I'm super thankful my mother-in-law's here too, and I'm so thankful because I don't know how my kids would get anywhere. And she would drive them to school in the morning. And my mom too, when my kids were littler, just helping out, because we have to, without that support, there's no way to do it all. You can't do it all, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay to go home at 4:30 if you need to. But it's also okay to work. And I want my daughter to believe that. It's okay to do what you want to do. And you can do it all, but also take care of yourself. So.
I was just at Maranatha Baptist University, and I confessed to their entire student body that I've had this job by the time I'm done, this will be the longest job I've ever had, because I'm a millennial and we change our jobs every 3 years. And all I think about in my spare thoughts is, what am I going to do after this? It's 3 years from now, and it consumes my free thought, which I don't get a ton of free thought, but when I do, it's the first thing that pops into my head. What am I going to do? So the advice that I give people when I get this type of question is, I never in a million years thought this would be my job. It started as a rumor, you guys, no joke, and I laughed about it. And my husband laughed really hard about it. And then we slowly were like, well, what if we do this? What would it look like if the kids were sick and I have this job? And what would it look like in our evenings if I'm sprinting to the football field at Washington Park? Maybe you've seen me do it. And so what I tell them is, if you don't know, don't care. Because I don't know what will come next, and I need to stop caring. Because I didn't think I would do this, and this is single-handedly the best career experience of my lifetime. I can't imagine what job I'll have next, and it's hard to think. I just said this to my husband today. I can't imagine having a boss every day again, watching me leave and go home, because I really do. If you're walking out of City Hall or driving by City Hall, you've probably seen me sprinting, literally running somewhere, because I committed to myself when I had this job that I would pick up my kids from school, that I would leave to go to their events. And I do, and then I go back to a city council meeting, or I go back after I drop them off at daycare, and then go back. But the short answer is, if you don't know what you're gonna do, stop caring about it.
because what you're meant to do will come to you. And then be brave enough to take it, because I almost wasn't. We're faithful people, and I prayed for a solid 6 months about if this was what I was put on this earth to do. And I never in a million years saw it in the stars for me, and I'm just thrilled that I was able, and still able, to serve in this way. So if you don't know, stop caring. It will present itself to you.
I learned the hard way, and that was definitely the hospital with COVID, and I didn't go home for days, and it really took a toll on my family. And I realized, what the heck am I doing? I had one of the VPs of Dwayne Floyd of HR said, there's not going to be a Nikki Sherry statue out here when you leave or you get hit by a bus, so go home, see your family. And it was an eye-opener, because I realized that I put my career before my family for quite some time. And when I'd leave in the middle of the night, my son would wake up and cry. That just tore my heartstrings. And so I was fortunate enough to have an opportunity arise, and not in nursing, and I thought, oh my gosh, am I going to actually be able to do this? And yes. And so my thing is to tell these kids that reach for the stars. The Great Resignation is happening right in front of us. And did I think I was going to be at the hospital and retire? Yes, but I didn't. And so now I have a new career, and I might not know everything, and it's okay, and we all learn, and we meet new people. But I have to say, what's been nice in Watertown is, like I said before, the partnerships and the support that you have. And I think it's like continuing to get our kids to build those partnerships, be involved, and being in a quaint community like this, it's a lot easier to do, and we just need to take advantage of it. I also agree, like Emily said, and Amy, work-life balance, taking the time, enjoying our parks, using it to our advantage. I know sometimes life gets so busy and we forget about that, but I think that's most important.
Just had this idea go off in my head. I'm term limited in a few years. I think we just, Nate's shaking his head. Yeah, it's like Nikki talks about the city so well.
Been waiting for it.
Handpicking, right? Handpicking. Well, thank you ladies so much for being here. I think we all learned a lot about you, and a lot about being successful, and a lot about what Watertown has to offer. And thank you all for being here with lovely turnout. We really, really appreciate it. Again, we're the American Association for University Women, AAUW. And if you want to help support women in the community, we would love for you to be part of our organization. There's information up there about joining. We want to make a difference, and so we'd love you to help us out. Thank you again for being here, and good night.